To hijack Erapalli Prasanna's maxim about line and length, I sometimes think sport is optional, sports writing mandatory. This is logically unsustainable, for without the first, there's no second. Sport gives us entertainment, emotion, personalities. Sports writing connects those things to the world we live in. It joins the dots between what we see and our diverse societies, our all too common human nature. Lines from Rahul Bhattacharya, one of the great modern writers, which present a fitting intro for our guest for this episode of Bits and Pieces. A writer whose body of work personifies these ideals, helping a whole generation of cricket fans make sense of some of the seemingly most difficult things to make sense of. Shahid Afridi, reverse swing, persistent batting collapses to improbable miracles, of the 92 variety to the 2017 variety. I am Srinath, your host for the episode, and it's a pleasure and privilege to welcome the creator and the partial disowner of the Hall as a one-word explainer of Pakistan cricket. We'll get to that in a few moments, but author of one of the 7 greatest cricket books as per Wisden Cricket Monthly, a slightly more credible authority than Bits and Pieces, and ESPN Cricket Info's senior editor, Osman Samiuddin. Hey, Osman, welcome.
Hello, thank you very much. And that's a completely needlessly praiseful, I guess. I can't even think of the word. Needless completely for the intro, but I'm much obliged and very grateful for it. Thank you.
And on the panel today, we have fanboys and a fangirl representing Bits and Pieces, wider group of fanboys and girls who are cheering us on. Hello to Zainab Razvi, Prashant, DP, and Tariq Laskar. Welcome, all of you.
Hi everyone.
Hi. Pleasure to be here.
Usman, I'll dive right in, right? Take us back to the time your mom woke you up on a hot Karachi afternoon to the tune of Beta Wasim Akram phone pe hai. Is that the point where sports writing career came into view for you?
That was probably the second kind of big moment. The first was the one that actually got me like the proper breakthrough was Rashid Latif. He had just become captain after the 2003 World Cup. Like you guys may remember, I don't know, all of you look really young. Actually, I don't know. Prashant doesn't look that young with a white beard. He's got a beard like mine. But all the other ones look all like under 40 types. So I don't know how well you remember the 2003 World Cup. But basically, Pakistan were crap. It was an aging generation. The team thought it was much better than it was, and it wasn't. And Waqar Yunus was captain. And they came back. They got dumped out of the World Cup. They came back like clean sweep of everything and everyone who's there. And Rashid Latif became captain, which was like the bizarrest choice for anyone. And I was still working at Dawn newspaper then in Pakistan, like, one of Pakistan's kind of leading English language dailies and stuff. And I was doing some like freelance stuff for Cricket for some bit. I had just literally like 2 months before that World Cup, I had started like with my first piece, which was on Imran Khan, actually, which was another story altogether. And I'm watching his son bat, which is scary. But so Sambit Bal, who Srinath, fairly well, and you guys will all be familiar with. We had a magazine in those days called Wisden Asia. What was it? Wisden Asia Cricket?
Asia Cricket.
Wisden Asia Cricket, right. And that was more important than the website, which tells you how long ago like this was. And like Sambit used to call me up once a month and say, it had only been 2 phone calls until then. He said that, why don't we do this month? He called me up that month and said, look, we're going to press like the day after tomorrow. Can you get an interview with Rashid Latif? And I was like, I'm at work writing some advertising copy right now. And so, maybe I'll try. And I got Rashid Latif's number. It was so easy. It's unbelievable, actually. I called up the PCB. And I spoke to their media guy, Shoaib Ahmed at the time in Karachi. And I said, listen, can I get Rashid Latif's number? He's like, yeah, sure. Here you go. I got his landline number. I called him up. Rashid answered the phone, which was even like greater surprise. Rashid was like, haan, ji, walaikum assalam, like in his deep kind of, Rashid has a really deep voice. And I explained to him that, mera naam Osman Samiuddin hai. I do some work for, the key back then to selling all this was Wisden. Like the Wisden name is so big, right? At that time, especially. So I said merely that I'm doing something for Wisden. I didn't even complete that it was Wisden Asia Cricket. And Rashid was like, haan, aajao, come over. I live here. And then I was like, oh, okay, great. Can I come over now? And he was like, haan, aajao, theek hai, baat kar lenge. And so I got his address. I said, okay, I'm just coming. And he says, एक minute. यार रास्ते में वो एक पैक बेंसन का ले आना. It's like, okay, I'll do that. So I picked up a pack of Benson Hedges. Kids, smoking is bad for you. Don't ever smoke in your life. All sports stars do, but don't do it. It's bad for you. And I picked up a pack of cigarettes for him. He gave me like this beautiful, wonderful, open and philosophical interview over like an hour. And I filed it that night. And Sambit, I think, was impressed. Sambit was like, oh, acha, I tried to get an interview with Pakistan captain. This guy did it in like, 8 hours flat. And then that was it. And then he kind of trusted me more and more to do more and stuff. And so one of the big pieces, this is the second moment, was one of the big pieces was ahead of India's tour to Pakistan in 2003, 2004. And we were doing like a cover feature on Pakistani pace bowling. And it was Mohammad Sami and Shoaib Akhtar, who I was trying to like hype up as like, the next W's or whatever. that went well, obviously. And I called up Wasim Akram for that, to like speak to him. And again, got his number through, I think I may have got his number through Rashid Latif actually. and called him up. There was nobody there, left a message. And then like maybe 3 days later, this moment happened when I was actually asleep. It was a Saturday. I remember this. I had come back from work because we used to work Saturdays then, like half days at dawn. And I came back and I was just like, asleep in bed in the afternoon. And my mom knocks on the door and she's like, Beta, phone aaya aapka. And I was like, oh, acha, kaun hai? Wasim Akram call kar. I was like, what? And then I ran downstairs to the kitchen phone and it was him. And he was returning the call. He was like, haan, baat kar lete hain. Kyun nahi? Abhi karna hai? And I was like, okay. And so, half an hour later, I had Wasim Akram. Maybe like a few days later, I had that story done. And kind of, that's how, I guess how it began. Yeah, more or less.
If only it was that easy, right? There's no social media.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's that easy or hard now. I don't know. Like, I guess getting in touch with players is difficult, but I've always found like Pakistani players, and this is really like the secret, which is not so much a secret anymore, but I think it's a secret to how I, have like whatever, I've, written a lot on Pakistan. It's because I feel like their players are still the most accessible players out of all full member nations in the world. Like, whatever the PCB is, they still give you access, even now, even though they're gatekeeping a bit more, but they give you access. And when something like the PSL happens, फिर तो ईद हो जाती है सबकी कि okay, let's get interview with this guy, let's get interview with that guy, everyone. So yeah, I think like I'm very fortunate to have been covering Pakistan because, if I was covering England or something or Australia, but the amount of hurdles you have or India, yeah, you can't even get anyone. But covering any of the others, like the amount of loops you have to kind of jump through to get one interview with like A-team player or something is ridiculous. Whereas here, Rashid Latif wants a pack of cigarettes and that's all he wants. Like, we're all winning. So.
Taking off on something that you said, would you say that Imran was the starting point of the fast bowling cult in Pakistan? I mean, this expectation that you always have to produce these amazing fast bowlers, did that really start with Imran, or would you date it back even further?
Yeah, I think as in he's the one who kind of turbo boosted the whole thing. They had fast bowlers, and I think more importantly, they didn't have great spinners. So they could only rely on fast bowlers. So obviously Fazal was the first kind of superstar fast bowler, superstar of that age. But even after that, even in the 60s, like, they had like Mohammad Munaf and Khan Mohammad, of course, was that early part, Mohammad Hussain, who were a lot of guys who didn't maybe do that well, but they kind of, played throughout that decade. To the extent that even like guys like Majid Khan, who could bowl a bit of medium pace, and Asif Iqbal, who bowled even less medium pace, but they were opening the attack for Pakistan, like I think on their debut tests in 1964-65 against Australia. And Majid, apparently, like there were questions about his action. Like when he bowled the bouncer, a lot of people thought he was chucking the bouncer essentially. So I think there was always there was a lack of really good spinners. Like, you had all-round spinners. You had Parvez Sajjad, who did well in one or two tests. You had Inti, who was an all-rounder. You had Mushtaq Mohammed, who was coming through, who was an all-rounder, more or less. And I think then Sarfraz came, of course, and he kind of changed things a little bit in that I think he set down a template of like being that kind of temperamental fiery, but he didn't kind of back it up with how quick he was on the pitch, at least. But I think, with the reverse swing, obviously that was instrumental. And then I think Imran, what he did was create like modern Pakistani fast bowling, the kind of ethos of it and the patterns of it as we see it now, so that you need to have a bit of a personality as well. Otherwise, you're just like, I don't know, Bichara, I don't like saying it, because he's a great bowler, but somebody like Mohammad Abbas. If Mohammad Abbas had like Mohammad Asif's personality, then he probably still would be playing for Pakistan right now. I don't think there's any doubt about that. So those kind of things like the personality, the hair, the sex symbol kind of part of being a fast bowler, I think those were kind of embedded post Imran. And I think because he had such an influence on Wasim, Wasim also kind of styled himself along those times. So, if you remember like early Wasim in I would say from 87 onwards. So 84, 85, he came out, he still had like a mustache and stuff. And he was like this really geeky South Asian boy, basically, who had this great skill. But I think 87 onwards, which is when he started spending proper time with Imran, is then when you see like the mullet growing and the mustache came off and he had like a gold chain suddenly. And he was hanging around Imran and learning stuff, not just on the field, but off the field about about the world, getting exposed to the world. And I think that then set in motion, Imran to Wasim and then onwards kind of set in motion what fast bowling was, Pakistani fast bowling was. But the other crucial thing that people, mostly like myself, sometimes overlook or don't talk about as much was that, Imran's ferocious work ethic, Wasim's crazy work ethic. These guys were like durable, strong, intelligent fast bowlers who kind of worked at their craft as well. I'm not saying that, younger guys now have many more challenges with kind of, all formats that they deal with. And I think just the intensity of the cricket they play is of a higher level now anyway. So it requires you to be physically different. But I don't think it should ever detract from the fact that like guys like Imran, Wasim, Waqar, even Aqib, those guys like worked their behinds off to kind of stay, primed for fast bowling. Like Imran, until his final days with like barely a shoulder working, was still like willing to bowl down, 7 overs in a World Cup final. So that durability, like Imran's career was 21 years, and that includes like a major stress fracture of the shin that knocked out 3 of his years, 2.5 to 3 of his years. Wasim Akram constantly bedeviled by groin injuries, shoulder injuries, some kind of problem. His groins were, ridiculously weak, that area of his body. So I think like just, all the fun parts that we write about and love and celebrate are great, of course, and they were set in by Imran. But the other impact of Imran, which I think sometimes gets lost, is just how hard he was willing to work on his bowling. Like he was an ordinary bowler when he first started, right. And he truly like transformed himself into, like by the early 80s, the world's best fast bowler, bar none. And that includes, I would say, like, guys like Marshall who were just coming through. I think Imran for a period of 2 years, from 81 to like 83 till he got injured, was probably the best fast bowler in the world. Right. And, he had worked extremely hard. Like he used to say it himself, and he worked like a dog throughout that time. And I think that is something that should actually be the kind of more of the selling sexy standard than the hair and the playboy personality and stuff like that.
Right. You've covered the legacy of Imran really well in your book. And you've also written this really moving chapter about Miandad and his quest for Izzat, as you call it.
Still ongoing, by the way.
Still ongoing, I'm sure.
Yeah.
My question is, what do you think are the problematic aspects of Imran's legacy? Like, what do you think are the negative burdens that he's left in his wake for Pakistan?
Of cricket?
Cricket,
cricket? I think, and none of these are, I would think, any of the problematic aspects of his legacies, I don't think are down to him. Because, whatever he did, he was just striving for like excellence and striving to make his team the best team in the world with the raw materials that he had, and his beliefs were so strong and they paid off. Like I have zero doubt. Like he made a few mistakes, like Mansoor Akhtar, maybe he played for too long, over other guys who could have been played. Maybe he dumped Saeed Anwar too early in his career from the test scene, at least, having seen him a little bit. But those were the results of him being a strong-minded man, and it was that strong-mindedness which I think led Pakistan to where it was. In terms of negative legacies, so I'll give you an example. Like Wasim Akram, when he first became captain in 92, 93, just after Mirdad was kicked out, Wasim became captain. His first instinct was to be like a strong man like Imran, to be like that kind of almost, I wouldn't say dictatorial, but this authority figure that ultimately younger guys just immediately respect. And they're kind of wary of and they listen to him, but they'll be willing to go out and die for him and stuff. So Wasim tried to fake that because he saw that as what Imran was. He saw that as Imran's legacy. And he couldn't do it. Wasim was like 26 at the time, 27 at the time. He was a great player, but he hadn't gotten to that position where Imran had been. So he tried to ape that. And I think a few captains after Imran have tried to ape that as well, to kind of try and draw that authority by just being dictators. And saying that I want to have all say over selection and I want to pick only young players. So, okay, Imran did that, but Imran did that in a time when selection was not, I think, as much of a skill as it is now. And Imran had a fairly good eye for picking players anyway, players that he wanted in the side. I think the role of the captain was so kind of large in those days, especially if you were a good one, that you could kind of run the entire national team setup pretty much as you wanted, And I think those things are things that captains, they've been laid down as a template. So people think, yaar, Imran ne jaise captaincy kari thi, waise mujhe bhi karna hai. But you have to understand that this is a different time, this is a different era. And, you can't, for example, Yunus Khan was another example of somebody who was very heavily influenced by Imran's captaincy, or what he thought was Imran's captaincy, but, didn't realize that, look, you have a different team, you have a different set of players, you have guys like Afridi there, you have guys like Shoaib Malik there who are different. You're not going to be able to treat them the way Imran treated, the senior kind of players in his side. You won't be able to do that. So I don't think that is a negative of Imran's legacy. I think the way people have interpreted it and they've interpreted it too narrowly. This belief in younger players, people say that it was Imran who kind of invested this belief in younger players and said that it was okay to pick a 18-year-old Waqar Yunus or whatever. It wasn't just Imran. Abdul Hafiz Kardar was doing it, from the kind of day he stepped out onto the cricket field.
Right.
Some of the youngest players Pakistan has played came under Kardar's captaincy, actually. And it was Kardar's belief in fast bowling. I forgot to mention in maybe that first answer, but it was Kardar who always believed that fast bowlers would be the ones who would win you games, which is why he was always willing to play fast bowlers over good spinners. That actually, these kind of things probably set in motion where Pakistan is right now in its belief in fast bowlers and in the way it nurtures fast bowlers and stuff. I think that probably had as much of an impact as Imran kind of turbo boosting it. But for the captaincy thing, yeah, I mean, I don't put that down to Imran. Imran did the best that he could in the time and the era that he had with the players that he had, and he did fantastically. He did absolutely fantastically with it. The players who've tried to ape that, who have come since, I think have misread the times that they're playing in and the sport they're now playing, that it's difficult to be that way. And so it, in hindsight, it gets looked as that, oh, Imran was a dictator as captain and stuff. And well, you kind of account for the fact that he was playing in the time that he was, and he had that kind of influence, and he was that kind of figure in that time who could do it. Others can't. I think Misbah was a great example of building that kind of respect and authority in a very different way, in a much more kind of consultative, much more vulnerable way, actually. Misbah did it.
And also possibly more respectful of structures.
Yeah, but that's also because the structures were more embedded by the time Misbah was doing it. At the time of Imran, literally selection meeting, Intikhab, Alam tells this great story that ahead of it's one of the World Cup games, I think maybe it was a semi-final, Imran was lying down getting a massage done in his towel, and Inti came and said ke haan bhai Imran, team pick karni hai kal ki. So Imran didn't want to get up off the massage table, and he kind of got Intikhab to line up the squad of 15 in front of him, and literally like a shooting squad said, you, and you're out. The rest of you are in tomorrow. And that was the selection. That was done. So, Imran was, in that time, there was no structure in that sense. But whereas Misbah had to deal with some 7 or 8 chief selectors and then their selection committees in his time. He had Yunus Khan to play off as well, because Yunus Khan had this kind of thing about wanting to be a captain but not wanting to be it. Very complicated. And Misbah had like a crazy, not as pliant a media to deal with as Imran did. Misbah had like private television stations to deal with. Imran had PTV. Different, completely different era. But yeah, I think Misbah showed that you can build. I think maybe Babar, in what he's done with his own team, at least. No, I know people criticize his captaincy, but I think Babar, in the loyalty that he's engendered within the team, I think has been nothing short of phenomenal. Although I feel like it might start getting a bit tested now with Shaheen's rise as this figure. But I think like Babar, for the last 2.5 years or something, has built up a kind of loyalty and respect within the team. And a lot of it, like with Imran and Misbah, comes down to your own performances. If your players see that you are absolutely world class, then they're going to be more willing to kind of go into the field and die for you or whatever.
It's a bit of a throwback since we talked about Imran, and whenever we talk about Pakistan fast bowling, reverse swing automatically comes into the picture. So I want to read back the first Cricinfo profile that was put up of Osman, which claimed that Osman spent the first half of his life pretending he discovered reverse swing with a tennis ball half covered in electrical tape. And then it said the second half of his life was spent discovering spiritual fulfillment in the world of Pakistani advertising and marketing. Having not found any fulfillment there, the third half of his life will be devoted to convincing people that he did discover reverse swing. So the question is, did you discover reverse swing, and how do you convince bits and pieces that you did?
In my head, I discovered reverse swing. In my head, it is me who has discovered it, not Sarfraz or Bari Saab, who Sarfraz picked it up from one of Majid Khan's cousins. I think the story goes that he said to Sarfraz at a net session in Lahore Gymkhana that ball ko agar is tarah se thoda sa purana kar do to shayad kuch ho, and Sarfraz picked it up from there and then turned into something. No, I didn't live in Pakistan when I was growing up. I lived outside of Pakistan, and we used to go to Pakistan every summer. And for me, those summers were predominantly about playing cricket, like gully cricket. And the height of delight was that if we would get like a match to play, and I would join, I would push myself into a team that my cousin was playing for with his friends. But I'd be like, come on, man, I'm here for like the summer. Let me play one game or whatever. And he would put me into these matches, and they were like absolutely the highlight of my entire year, most of the times. And so there, I discovered that first of all, tape ball. So I started playing with a tape ball, and the balls were slightly heavier, so they were better than tennis balls, because until then I had played with a tennis ball. They bounce too much. They don't do anything really, tennis balls, and when they bounce, they take like the pace out. So you're putting all this effort in, and it's for no good reason. But tape ball felt slightly heavier, and it wasn't so heavy that it was a cricket ball. It didn't hurt as much as a cricket ball, so it was the ideal kind of in between thing where you didn't need to have like padding or anything to kind of play it. And then I distinctly remember we were playing just a gully match, actually, just outside our house, or my cousin's house. And he showed me, my cousin Adnan, a little bit older than me. And he was the guy that I used to look up to as a cricketer, because he was very good, used to play. And he showed me, like, we were playing with this tape ball, it got hit around, and then suddenly there was like bits of the tape that had come off from the sides, just from literally, if you hit the hard ball against an advertising board, it becomes rough, and so you start reverse swinging. Literally like that. It had been going into these sandy fields. Some of it came out, and he said, "Watch this," and he pulled a little bit more of it off, so he gave more room to the tape ball to the tennis ball on one side, and then he had this kind of slingy-ish action, very side on, and he just becomes slingy. And he went up and bowled, and I could see visibly this ball just dipped in sharply, and I was like, what the hell, I try and do this with a tape ball, I do nothing, I just bowl arrow straight. And so that was literally my first introduction. Now, reverse swing had been happening. This is I'm talking maybe 87, 88. So reverse swing had been happening for a good, maybe a decade even, but it wasn't openly kind of spoken about as much, and I don't know how people came across it. They just kind of did, I think, naturally. Tape would come off and you would bowl, and so then I started bowling it, and my God, it was hello. And so I started bowling that the same summer that they used to show this, they used to show highlights of the Benson and Hedges Tri-Series Challenge from Australia in Pakistan. And my cousin he used to video them. And so in the summer, I would sit down with him and watch all these games. And in those summers, I don't know if you guys remember Simon O'Donnell, all-rounder, Australian all-rounder, and Steve Waugh, who was then an all-rounder and not like the moral guardian of cricket's morality or whatever that he is now, via his captaincy of Australia or whatever. And they were the guys who started bowling those back-of-the-hand slower balls. And I was like, hello, what new magic is this? So I combined like being able to bowl some reverse swing and some, not back-of-the-hand slower balls, but I started bowling cutters. And so that summer, like completely, this was 87, I'm pretty sure it was 87 or 88 or 87 or 89, because I wasn't there in 88. And those summers completely changed the way I played like just cricket, street cricket. And I actually became like what I would like to think like a fairly serious street kind of cricketer. Like I could hold my own. Before then I was just like this pappu who had come from abroad and chalo khila dete hain, he's this guy's cousin. Yeah, burger type, khila dete hain, let him play and all. But then after that summer, I actually started doing this stuff and I became a semi-decent bowler. So I would play on merit and it just completely changed my world. So this is why I like to think that I created reverse swing when in fact, of course, I did.
Since you were narrating your stories about playing street cricket, and I assumed that you were talking about Karachi. So I know the team is shit right now, but Lahore or Karachi, take your pick.
Wait, okay. Now I have to qualify this question. Lahore, Karachi, do you mean as in the cities or do you mean the teams in the PSL?
Obviously the teams, it's a no-brainer. So you have to.
So it would have to be Lahore any day of the week, man. Even when they were crap, I would have much preferred watching them. Karachi were always just middling. Karachi like somehow become this really functional bits and pieces players with maybe Amir thrown in and Imad having like a legendary season and Wasim kind of overseeing it all with one very benign kind of influence. If influence, I think maybe too strong a word for his role at Karachi Kings, but easily Lahore, because Lahore, at least when they were bad, they were hilarious, and when they're good, they're still like awesome to watch. So I would hands down Lahore any day of the week.
And
I would pay to watch a Lahore match over a Karachi Kings match for sure.
And what about as a city?
Oh, oof. So Lahore, when the first time I went to Lahore, was like for a half a day visit in 94, and I didn't really like it. It was just too hot. I went in July. It was like peak, like Delhi dry heat season and all, and I like didn't take in any of it. It was on the way to going up north. But then I started going to Lahore for cricket and travel and stuff, and I made some friends there. And like for the first 6 or 7 times that I went to Lahore, I was absolutely blown away. I would come back to Karachi and tell my parents like, why are we here? Like, why do we live here? This is Lahore. Lahore's a great city, and I think in India this happened to me with Bombay and Delhi as well. Because when I first went to India, I spent like a long time in Bombay for training at Cricinfo, and I was there for like a month. And then I went on my next trip to Delhi, like where my wife is from, and I was like, oh man, Delhi sucks. Like Bombay is where it's at completely. But over the years, like since I've been going, Delhi is like, oh, you know what? Delhi's pretty good. So with Lahore, I had this brief and very strong infatuation where I thought Lahore is just like the best city in the world. And then like, I was like, no, wait, who am I kidding? Like Karachi is just, I had this one great thing happen to me in Lahore once, which like to me at that time completely illustrated the difference between the two cities. I was in Lahore. I was at a friend's house, and it was during a cricket tour actually, nothing to do with cricket, but it was during a cricket tour. I left the house to walk back to wherever I was staying at a guest house because it wasn't that far a distance. And Lahore was okay to walk back in at that time. So this is like, maybe mid to late 2000s. And Lahore was still okay compared to Karachi to walk back in. And I was walking down, and this guy started walking up to me with a fair bit of intent, like wearing a shalwar kameez and walking up to me with a fair bit of intent from the opposite end. And there was like one or two street lights. And I was like, okay, like something's about to happen here. I don't know what it is. And I started like hurrying my pace and started going a little bit to the side. And he noted this, of course. And then when he came up to me, he was like, Bhaijan. And I was like, nahi, mere paas time nahi. And I just walked. And he was, I remember this forever. I heard him because he turned around and said, भाईजान आप जरूर कराची को होंगे इसलिए मैं सिर्फ आपसे टाइम पूछना चाह रहा था. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry, यार टाइम ये इतना बजे सर बस मुझे टाइम पूछना था. And I was like, because in Karachi, if someone does that to you, they're gonna stick you up. They want your phone, they want something or the other. And this guy, all he wanted was to know the time. And I think that like signified in my head at that time the difference between Lahore and Karachi. Like Lahore was just felt like safe and fun and happening, and Karachi was like just work and functional and get things done and get from point A to B. Don't notice the journey, just get there. Whereas Lahore is all कि हाँ हम जा रहे हैं A से B, लेकिन बीच में अगर X और T भी आ गए तो वहां भी घूम लेंगे थोड़ा सा और ये भी देख लेंगे और पहुंच जाएंगे आखिर B तक. But you know, whatever. So as cities, yeah, it was Lahore very briefly, but I mean, Karachi is in my heart, man. Like, even though it's going to the absolute dogs right now, like, you know, what can you do? You got to love it as it is.
Tariq, this has already answered your Delhi.
Yeah. I knew that the follow-up question would come, so I anticipated that. So, Osman, I wanted to ask you about a little bit about your writing style because. Number one, personal confession, I started blogging about cricket after reading your pieces. I think it was back in like 2004 or something like that. And the reason was because I think there are a couple of lines that stand out to me. There was one match report where you had mentioned Lombard Street in San Francisco, and you said that the day, I think it was a Pakistan-South Africa match.
The world's curviest street, right?
Yeah. So you said that there's so many twists on that day of the match.
Yeah, that was Pakistan, South Africa, I think, one of the test matches. That series, I think that's the last time Pakistan won a test match there in South Africa, 2006-07.
Yes, it is, I think, 2006. I also don't recall the exact date, but that line stuck with me because I happen to use like a lot of analogies and things like that. I remember you talked about Rohit Sharma's sixes in, I think, 2019 when you said that they are so high and so grand that people in Dubai were wondering why have they not built it yet.
The full playlist, Osman. The full playlist.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah. It remembered as much as Hal.
So my question was that something you consciously brought in, or was that a style that you look at? Like, how do you look at, so when you are writing, bringing in these kind of analogies or parallels?
It was certainly not something that I started with. You know, I look at, like, you know, you introduced the show with Rahul, who I consider to be like not just like, you know, the greatest cricket writer I've seen, and I very much include guys like Gideon in that list. I don't think anybody writes prose like Rahul does, and I think he was always like that. Like, he arrived on this planet to write and to write the way he does. If you look at Rahul's writing from 2002 onwards to like now, and I know he doesn't write on cricket anymore, but you know, he writes here and there. There's, you know, that you can see like that. Even in 2002, Rahul was a truly special writer, and he was natural. He was just gifted all the way through. It's been like that. Whereas I feel like with me, you know, I don't put myself anywhere near him, but I feel like I've had to work on my writing more. So if you look through my earliest writings, they're quite different actually to, you know, how I write now. And I feel like if anything, I've probably developed as a writer over the years. And 2006, you know, you say that was a time when actually, so I was, you know, I'd been with Cricinfo full time for just over a year, and you know, it was like one of the greatest times of my life. And I think what it did was it got me writing regularly. Like before then, I used to do freelance stuff, and I used to write, you know, in Dawn on like advertising and stuff, which was, you know, just completely different. But I think the more I started watching, the more regularly I started writing, then it was around that time that I really started to develop whatever, like, you know, whatever my style is or my voice is. I think that started then. And I strongly believe that, you know, it was spurred on by, like, this is not scientifically tested or anything, but I feel like going through crisis or living in a time of crisis helps me at least create more and better. I somehow it's like a cigarette. It focuses your mind, I think, perhaps, you know, in that sense. And I feel like what Pakistan was going through in that period. So I remember specifically 2006, the summer of 2006 was when the electricity load shedding really started going bad in Karachi. And that was problematic. Like now it sounds like, oh, it's just a small thing, but it just started then. You were getting like rolling, 2-hour blackouts 4 times a day, 6 times a day. Sometimes you'd have like a 14-hour blackout, which really affects your daily life. You can't do a lot of stuff. And then the next summer, like the Musharraf thing happened, the end years of Musharraf happened, and so the country started kind of spiraling into this. And I strongly believe that if things around you are in that kind of crisis, it just gives you somehow like more freedom and more creativity to kind of pick from. I think writers, or the best writers, are naturally skeptics, and maybe kind of most people will, I think my family will hate me for saying this, but like glass half empty kind of guys. I think you're able to write better seeing things like that, rather than, because if everyone's happy, there's not much to write about. And so, because things were like kind of spiraling out of control in the country, and that has an impact on you as an individual, I think maybe it unlocked something in me that allowed me to kind of develop my writing more, like a sense of humor. And a lot of things go into it. So, I had grown up and studied in England, and worked there for a little bit. And I think that sense of the gallows humor came from having lived here. If I'd lived in like North America, for example, maybe it would have been different. Although, North America has a great sports writing culture as well, but it could have been different, whatever. So I think around that time is when kind of, and of course being around, Cricket 4 at that time, Sambit was much more involved in the writing side of things. You still, I mean, not 2006 as such, but, Rahul, Anand Vasu, Sidvi, Amit Verma, who doesn't get talked about very often, Chandrahas Chaudhary, who's like a proper novelist now, but, he was at Cricket 4 at the time. If you hung around, toured with these guys, worked with these guys, lived as I did in Bombay for a month with these guys, I think naturally it enhances your kind of, your writing can't help but kind of improve. Plus, like the regularity of writing and watching and being able to tour and watch matches, I think all of those played into it. And I think, yeah, much more than Rahul, I think I had to work on making something of my writing, and then after that, I guess, like stints like at the National, where I was writing in a newspaper, and I was writing like 4 times a week. I would have to do like a column. That's like a different discipline altogether, but that really sharpens your sense of writing, I think, and I learned a lot from that. I would get a call to say, okay, today you have to do like a 950 word piece on whatever you want in cricket. And so I'd start writing, and I'd be like 600 words in, and they'd be like, oh, mate, we've got an ad in. We might need to do a 700 word piece. And I was like, okay. And you have like an hour. And I was like, oh, man. So, to then like cut down these things, I think just like without even realizing, you develop more and more of a style, and you develop your skills of writing, you develop the way you think about the world, of course, and it depends like whether you have other interests in life. Cricket has never been the only thing for me in life generally. I'm, Srinath knows a bit more. I'm crazy into music. Like I'm, all kinds of music. Music probably has the same visceral feel on me that as cricket does, sometimes more, a lot of music. I read a lot. I watch, I consume. I was thinking to myself the other day, I'm a good consumer of culture. Of pop culture, like of all kinds. You can throw anything at me and I will read it, I will digest it, I will watch it, I will listen to it, whatever. If I have time, I will do it. And I think being like, what do they know of cricket, who only cricket know, that kind of thing. I think if you are generally, so Lombard Street came from, I was lucky enough to have traveled there, but also once I traveled there on a holiday, I read up about it because I was like, genuinely intrigued by why the hell have we got a street which is this curvy in this world? Like, why don't you make things straight? And then to know that, okay, I think Kamran Abbasi had used a line. He had, Kamran Abbasi, another great, Pakistan writer, he had used this great line once. He didn't even use it in his writing. He just said it. Rahul wanted to interview Abdul Qadir. And I think Rahul writes this in his book. In Pandits, he wanted to interview Abdul Qadir, and he went through Kamran, and Kamran called up Abdul Qadir, and he said to him, "Ke, हाँ, Qadir भाई, वो Rahul आपसे interview करना चाह रहा है, फिक्र नहीं करिए, वो बिल्कुल सीधा है, जलेबी जैसा सीधा है एकदम. And so it was like, okay. So I think that stuck in my head somewhere maybe, and that came out as you're as straight as Lombard Street or whatever. So these kind of things, it just, I guess they come from like the various influences and inputs that you've had around you over the course of a lifetime. I now also, by the way, this is why I love phones. I have on the notes section on iPhone, I have one note which is just, I think it's been built over 5, 6, 7, 8 years now, which is just a series of like lines that have come to me, thoughts expanded out slightly, and I look through it like all the time, and every now and again it'll spark an idea for something, and I'll kind of write it down. Or
you didn't mention that you also run and you take notes while running.
Yes,
right? Yeah.
Yes. I don't take notes, but I clear things up in my head when I'm running. That's like I love running for the sake of running, because it's a great like physical release of adrenaline and stuff like this. But I think what a lot of what it does is, if I'm working on a piece, as I am these days actually, and I haven't been able to run, it clarifies your mind, or my mind at least, into how to structure a piece and where to put what argument and stuff when it's that kind of piece. So yeah, with the naughtier pieces, I think the tougher pieces, I think running definitely kind of irons out the wrinkles a lot of the times.
So actually, there's a piece that I wanted to ask you about. There's a beautiful piece you've written about, I think, Ajmal's travails with his bowling action.
Okay.
It's probably one of my favorite Osman pieces.
Oh wow! Is that the Let's Talk About Flex?
Yes, exactly.
You are the first person in my life. I love that piece, by the way, because
I love it.
You are the first person who has actually brought that piece up and said it's a great piece. Thank you. No, it's made it worth it after all these years. It's made it worth it.
I mean, that is my absolute favorite piece, because so there's a feeling when you look at Pakistani bowlers over the years, right? Like every time someone does something awesome, there's a question of legality, right? So reverse swing happened, and then they said you're tampering with the ball. Shoaib Akhtar started bowling thunderbolts, and they said your elbows flexing. Saklan started bowling the dusra, and then suddenly you had guys saying you can't bowl a dusra without flexing your arm. And then of course Ajmal was, he was the best spinner in the world at the point when. So it is very easy for this narrative of victimhood and paranoia to seep in, and yet you were able. The control of tone on that piece was amazing. I mean, how did you actually write that schizophrenically as two different parts and actually put them together?
It's funny you say that, because it wasn't me who had that conflict within myself, but that piece, that commission. So this was, the great early days of TCM, the Cricket Monthly, where we used to have long form features and stuff. R.I.P. May that rest in peace. But that had actually started off as a commission that we had given to Saad Shafkat, another great Pakistani writer, and we had said to him that, hey, why don't we do like a long profile on Saeed Ajmal, where you go and meet him, and you travel to Faisalabad, you meet him, and let's do a long piece out of that. And he was like, great, I'll do it. And so he had actually done the interview. He had written out a piece when, boom, he got called. So, he literally, I think we were going to run it in the September issue, and he got called in August. And we were like, oh, okay, now we have a problem. What do we do here? So we paid a kill fee to Saad for having done the piece, but us having to drop it because we couldn't run it. And then again, and this was because Rahul and Sid and Leslie, Sidvi and Leslie, who's never spoken about publicly because he's just the world's best secret, but Leslie, who's the features spirit and force behind Cricinfo. We all discussed what to do, and we came out with this idea that, okay, because these actions were getting called more and more. Saeed Ajmal was probably the most high profile at the time. And we thought, okay, let's turn this piece into this. And, have a bit of kind of sympathy about Ajmal. And I had done a bit of reportage on it, for daily, for my newspaper at the time, for the National. So I had a sense that, the issue is not as clear cut as it appeared. And in Jeff Allardyce, who was not the CEO then at the ICC, but the cricket manager, great guy, by the way, really, really good general manager cricket. Like he knows the game inside out. He was amazing. And so I reached out to him. I said that, look, I'm thinking of going a bit bigger on this, and I'd like to speak to you about like how you have come across to these regulations. And so I think at that point it was decided, and again, Rahul was instrumental, Sid V, instrumental, Leslie. We said that, look, because it's looking like the ICC has invested some science into this, why don't we go that way and look at that science? And I was like, yes, I'm more than happy because I've got a little bit of knowledge and I can build on that and do some more on it by conducting some interviews and stuff. The more I got into it, I think I even write, the more you get into it, the more you get sucked into it as well, because there's so much more. It doesn't stop. Like, where do you stop with intent and elbow rotation and God knows what else there is. And I started writing this piece, and then I also felt that we have to kind of pay some tribute to Ajmal, because it's not like he's cheating. It's just that this is how he's grown up. This is the action that he has. He's not duping anyone. And it was Ajmal, he's like a teddy bear, like the sweetest, cuddliest guy in the world who had this terrible thing happen to him. So we decided that the Ajmal's plight could be personalized and made as almost an intro into the piece. That this is the human toll it takes, but this is why it's kind of necessary to have this process, because what the ICC have done, and I give them credit even now, the ICC, for such an emotive issue for so long, chucking had been such an emotive issue, right down to it being called chucking, which kind of implies that you're doing something underhand and all. For them to have just taken the sting out of it was phenomenal. How they did it. Dave Richardson was the guy who kind of started it, with that one study that showed that everyone actually had a bent elbow at release, apart from Ramesh Sarwan,
right?
Who had like a straight arm. Even McGrath had like kind of a bend. And then I started speaking to these academics who were involved in, the biomechanics, who were the biomechanists, I guess, who were involved in the ICC's research. They had done all this research and presented to the ICC 2-3 years before I'd even spoken to them. And I started speaking to them, and they were fascinating people in because they came at it purely from science. They were not like, he's doing it because he's cheating to win a match for his country. They were like, oh, this is how his elbow works. Wow, that's strange. Does this mean that this then does this? And they were telling me about cases of players that they had, like under 19 players in Australia who they had tracked, and this one under 19 player who had a completely normal action before he had a car accident, and his shoulder got affected, and then he came back to bowl. He was an off spinner before, he was an off spinner afterwards, and suddenly they found that he could bowl the dusra without flexing, without going past the flex and stuff. Now, he never made it as a cricketer, I don't think. He was maybe he was even under 19, he was under 16 or 17 or something. But, he was using that as just an example to say that, look, this guy, because of the accident that he had, it turned out that something in his arm actually meant that he could bowl the dusra without having to kind of have an illegal action for it, without having to go over the required degree of flex. Things like that, things like, the optics of what you see, which is not what is happening. Somebody if you see the side-on shot, it's one of my favorite cricket shots these days, to see the side-on of Bumrah. Absolute side-on at release. How much hyperextension there is in his elbow. It's crazy. It's absolutely insane. And that's something that, again, we know very little about, what impact it has. Shoaib had this always in his arm. Shahnawaz Dahani, I had no idea, by the way, about this, but Sid Monga posted a picture of him and Dhoni. He sent it to me side by side. And Dahani's hyperextension is also insane. You wouldn't see it from just watching him bowl. You wouldn't think it. Shaheen's whip of the wrist. So all these things, it's actually a really beautiful thing how people are investing money and researching into these things. And so it felt like a really natural thing to kind of take the story into. These guys were engaging guys, and they were doing their hardest to kind of break down pretty complex stuff into fairly straightforward English. And that I found was the biggest challenge, was to break it down into stuff that people could understand. And then, there was the book that I referred to, Ian McDonald's book, Straight from the Shoulder or whatever, which is a book written in the 60s, right, about chucking, because, chucking was massive then, and it was a big issue then in Ashes and stuff. And he'd written this wonderful ahead of its time book where he was basically trying to take the sting out of like the morality of it. And he even had pictures of guys throwing javelins. And like if I had the book with me, I'd show you guys the picture. It looks almost exactly like Shoaib Akhtar's action, like at release, which, you would say, oh, he chucks, but Shoaib Akhtar has hyperextension, so you can't do anything about that, And, those are the days when TCM was stupidly put behind some kind of weird registration paywall, which wasn't actually pay. You just had to give your Facebook account
just
or something.
A wall. Yeah.
Just a wall. Yeah, just a wall. And it wasn't even Rahul Dravid, right? So it was just like, what is this? And and like I think probably very few people read it, but it's one of the pieces that I'm most proud of, just because I had to throw myself into like a world that I was completely unfamiliar with, but I ended up learning like a hell of a lot from it.
I don't think we can let you go without diving into this, Osman. You referenced Rahul Pandits from Pakistan, glass half empty, all of that. I remember a passage from Rahul's book where you guys pretended that you were sick of the sentiment of dosti between the two countries. And here we are in 2023, still watching Afridi and Gambhir play Legends League cricket. So my question to you is, are the rest of our lifetimes an endless series of Afridi versus Gambhir, or will we get any more actual cricket? Where do you see that going? Like, we're talking boycotts 15 years later.
I look back at like 2006. I even wrote about like the excessive dosti of that time. They had like 4 series in 4 years, and it was just like, guys, just get over it, get a hotel room or something, move away. And I feel bad. Like I feel so bad for having like jinxed it almost. But I don't know. I would love to think that, look, I'm hopefully, fingers crossed, like maybe halfway through my life now. I have maybe like another half of how much I've lived to live. I would think that it's almost impossible that we won't see regular India-Pakistan cricket in that time. Like the way these countries turn, the way they switch, the way relations switch, the way like geopolitics changes, nobody has any permanent interests. I just feel like it would be almost impossible if we didn't go through another phase of semi-regular bilateral cricket between the two teams. I'm just like, I'm going to forever regret, I know, not having seen like the Misbah era team at its peak against like the India team that was building to like what is now like, undoubtedly like the best team in the world. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Bazball can stick it for a while, but I think they are the best side in the world right now.
India finally having a base attack to speak of and never facing Pakistan, right?
Exactly. And I would have loved to have seen like Ashwin play against guys like bowl to guys like Misbah and Yunus, in the UAE and in India as well, because you would have different challenges there. I would love to have seen peak Yasir Shah bowling to, I think India would have handled him, but I would have loved to have seen it. Maybe Pakistan's fast bowling in that era wasn't quite as solid as it is now, but I think like the spinners they had, it would have been amazing to see. And like just to see like Yunus and Misbah against Ashwin and Jaddu or somebody, or even Pragan Ojha at the time, it would have been amazing. And so that's going to be forever like a long lasting regret that those two teams never matched up. I think it'd be now. I don't think Pakistan would be able to handle them now. Because I don't think Pakistan's test side is kind of, it's going through a weird period where it's not really settled, although it's got some decent players. But I think India are far more together right now, and they're much more advanced in their kind of, in their narrative of where they are with players. But yeah, I would think that ultimately we will see like another period of like regular cricket between the two sides. I would hope. And then I'll be there moaning and bitching about it as well. So too much of this. There's too much tension. I don't want it. I don't like the tension that accompanies it, all the time.
The economics add up, right? Like the board, Pakistani Cricket Board would want to play India. There's obviously the boycott threat, etc. as a front. But do you think Pakistan cricket needs India at all as things stand, or do you think that's?
I think we're beyond the stage where either of them need each other. India has enough rivalries with Australia and England to kind of keep that going. There's the IPL now. I don't think India needs Pakistan, and I don't think, frankly, actually, after 15 years of it not having happened, I think Pakistan has worked out a way of surviving, even thriving, without playing bilateral cricket with India. And I say this, I write this, and I say this everywhere I go. I write this whenever it comes up, is that I think Pakistan have shown a way forward to kind of wean the reliance on India, which is, I don't say that as like a vindictive thing, as like, oh yeah, we shouldn't be so reliant on India. It's good for India as well that the world game isn't weighing and everything up on India. Like that's not fair for like India to be the one that holds up the world game alone. That makes other countries complacent and lazy in developing the game in their countries. It prevents the game from growing as well, like truly growing. Like, if you see, like I've been covering, because of this Sandeep Lamichan story, I've been kind of keeping an eye on how Nepal have been doing in the World Cricket League. And like the scenes over there are crazy. And I know like Nepal have always had a crazy crowd, but right now what they've done, when they beat the UAE and they got through to the qualifiers now in Zimbabwe, the crowds that day in Qatar were like amazing, like insane. And I know like ex-colleague of mine, Paul Radley, was out there for it. And he was saying that I've never seen an atmosphere like this, and he's covered World Cups and stuff and covered test matches in England and stuff. And he was like, I've never seen an atmosphere like this. So, I think it's unfair for the game to just throw everything onto India. Like, you'll get us a deal from your broadcast market. We'll make enough money and your sponsors will come to us. No, like develop the game outside of India as well, man. Like bring in other countries, tap into those markets that you've been promising for like God knows how many years, the US and China and where else. Start tapping into them. Start enabling your members who are already fairly well established, but not maybe doing as well as they should be. Start enabling them to do better. And so I think in that sense, Pakistan has probably been one of the ones by default. I don't think they've done it by design at all. I think they've stumbled into this where they've now actually, the only thing that I think the PCB lacks is a good broadcast deal. The broadcast market, the media market in Pakistan is weird. It's dominated too much by a state broadcaster, and those are the issues that Doordarshan had, or India had rather, with Doordarshan back in like the mid 2000s. But I think if they can sort that out and get a decent broadcast deal in place, then oh my God, they'll be thriving and will probably feel the need to play India bilaterally less than they do now. Like, if it's a headache to do it, then let's just not do it. Let's find other things to do, So I think that reliance in Pakistan has also gone down, although they'll of course not lose a chance for some political posturing to kind of keep it alive as an issue. But I don't really think it's an issue that exercises their heads every day.
A bit of inspiration from the guys in what they did with Gideon a couple of episodes ago. So it's a series of light, short answer questions. Some of them are one-word answers, even.
This has a potential to go very wrong.
This is the first one's a banana peel for you straight up. So Pasoori or Chankitang?
Neither. Ghazab kiya. In fact, by Ali said, I don't like Pasoori. I have to say, I don't like Pasoori at all. But I love Ghazab kiya.
Yeah, very good. If Hal were to be one Pakistani cricketer,
Wasim Akram.
Nice. Imran or Javed, who is more essential in Pakistani cricket turning out the way it has?
That's not a binary, man. That's not a binary, man. Come on. I can't say both. I can. Who's gonna mark me wrong? This is not like a test. Who's gonna argue? I'll say both. Absolutely both. Split down the middle for both, in fact. The victimhood and quest for izzat of Javed with the bluster and the aura of Imran. Absolutely.
You said both with nuance. That's what we're after. Love it. Who's your second favorite team to watch for work or pleasure, cricket or otherwise? I'm assuming Pakistan's number one.
That, well, assumption is the mother of all F-ups. At the moment, I love watching England. Whether it's white ball or red ball, I love watching England. I know that sounds like it's almost like I need to push that out of my throat. It's so difficult to bring that out after years and years of anyone but England. But I absolutely love watching them. They're amazing to watch.
I'm having the urge to cancel you, Usman.
I know. I'm really sorry. I can't. They are just the funnest team to watch. New Zealand I find too boring. I'm sorry. Bolt is not there. Sri Lanka I love just because like they are always going to do something that I'm just not expecting at all. India I like watching actually. I do like watching India, but I like watching them a lot more when Bumrah is in the side. Bumrah is hands down the fast bowler. He's like the Virender Sehwag for me for bowlers. I used to love watching Viru bat, and I love watching Bumrah bowl. Absolutely.
Viru is a Hal cricketer in his own way.
100%, man, 100%.
Pre-Dhoni. For listeners who are wondering, it's like...
Dhoni's come along and just spoiled everything by being so like cool and calm and everything. Viru was the guy, Viru was the original cool. Original cool and calm. Coming in, eating firnis, like out with just for no reason, firnis and kheers, and then going out and hitting a triple century the next day. Viru was a legend. Total legend.
Singing in the middle of the pitch. Yeah.
I don't watch it. I don't follow him on Twitter, luckily, I think.
Good. Sensible choice.
Which is, I think, the secret to my admiration for him. My enduring admiration for him.
Javed or Dhoni in a chase?
Javed. Just because, I think just because of when I watched him and the time that I watched him in chases, he just I don't think anyone can have a greater impact on my mind about what constitutes chasing than Javed pulling it off the World Cup semi-final against New Zealand. I know, people talk about Inzi, but that was Javed all the way through, man. 150%. I think he hit 2 fours in his run a ball 53. 100%, hands down, Javed. If Javed wasn't there, Inzi doesn't play that innings. And of course, the Australasia chase. But just, Javed, I think. Dhoni, I love him for many things, but not least his keeping. I think he was just an amazing keeper to watch because he just wasn't a keeper, and he would do stuff that no keepers would do, but he would do them because he was just practical, and that's how they were done. And of course, Dhoni's batting. I'm the cool, calm finisher that Dhoni was, for me, kind of took away from when I saw him the first time round, and he hit that 140 against Pakistan, I think in Vizag, in fact. Superb innings, like he was, reverse lap scooping or something, Abdur Razak in 2005. And it was like, man, if you can bat like that, then you just bat like that for the rest of your life. Don't become like this cool, calm, I will take it down to the last over. I will do mano against Jamaica Fernando or somebody and hit a 6 off the last ball to win it. Yeah, it's all cool, but you're Dhoni, man. Like you're baseball type, you stick to that. So yeah, Javed for a number of reasons.
And your favorite Akmal sibling to write about?
I should say Adnan, really, shouldn't I?
To write about?
Omar, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. Kami was I enjoyed writing about Kami when he went through this one, kind of Gilchrist phase that he had for about a year and a half. But he was as a personality, poor guy, he was fairly dull to speak to and stuff, and very dull as in very much athlete speak, haan ji bas inshallah ho jayega aur kar raha hu mehnat kar raha hu, all this. Umar Akmal always a bit more colorful, generally in the situations that you found him in and in what he was willing to say and stuff. He was generally just a bit more, Umar Akmal, and as a player, at that time, wow. What a player to watch in 2009. Not so much in 2023, although he did do something in this PSL. I remember he played one innings where everyone was like, it's Akmal again. It's like, guys, it's not 2009. We're 14 years on from that. Just get over it. So yeah, Umar for sure. And poor Adnan, what can you say? It's a nice, the boring Akmal of the clan. Actually, I could maybe have said Babar Azam as the right answer. Because he is also an Akmal, right? So I could have said Babar Azam as the real correct answer, but Umar, I think, wins it.
If you could take one YouTube compilation to a deserted island, Bobby Prince cover drives 1080p or Wasim Babe best wickets 360p.
Wasim 360p any time. I'm a bowler, man. Forget cover drives and all. Please, what are you talking about? You have a bloody bat. That's only a small ball. You have flat pitches. You have all these things. You have padding. You have helmets. You have gloves. How you not going to hit a cover drive, man? Bowling is 100% any day of the week. And I would probably say that even if you said, I don't know, Izaz Chima bowling, or maybe not. Okay, maybe not Izaz Chima. I would have to draw a line somewhere.
Mohammad Abbas.
No, Abbas I love, man. Abbas I would take any day of the week. Abbas I would take for sure. Abbas was a great bowler. I think I would draw the line at like Izaz Chima and maybe Bilal Bhatti. But anyone above that line, I would choose them over Bobby P's cover driving.
Saim Ayub or Muhammad Aris?
I knew. I was even thinking of this. Just now I was thinking of this. Oh, man. I think for the moment, Mohammad Haris, because I feel like he's just a little bit more developed. He has a little bit more range. But I can see Saim changing this very quickly. One, anyway, because he's left-handed and he's quite elegant. And just the swag in some of his play, man. It's crazy. But so I was very much team Saim throughout this PSL. Not that, not at the expense of Mohammad Haris, but then Haris played that scoop against Shaheen, and this is literally Shaheen's superhero ball, and Haris just went back, scooped him over for 6 with it was nothing. Completely enraged Afridi, and I was like, oh man, it takes some serious whatevers to do that. And so yeah, I would say Haris. Plus he's also a little bit more proven on the international stage. So for now, Haris. I think he's a better fielder also though, and a keeper. He's better as both. So, I always have to take these things into account, which is why Imran Butt will remain a favorite cricketer of mine, always. The greatest slip fielder ever. Maybe not, but one of the greatest.
This is it's quite a fitting one to finish, and this time we'll finish for sure. If you had to pick one Pakistani meme you'll remember at your old age, some thought starters. Ye government big gayi hai, maro mujhe maro. Or disappointed fan with double teapot, aka Wasim Akram.
I think it would be the ye government big gayi one, because that just applies to so many situations in life. It is easily the most amazing meme I've ever seen, and just that lady, bless her with all my heart. She's speaking for an entire country. And the emotion is 220 million people's emotions filtered through her one mouth. I love her to bits, man. If I saw her, I would definitely take her out for dinner and just spend an evening with her, because she was amazing. The spirit with which she said it, that one wins. Wasim Akram, yeah, I like it. I was actually there at that match. Never saw him. I saw the drop catch, Asif Ali ka drop catch tha, but and he's good, of course, and he's probably traveled a bit more. That meme. But ye government big gayi hai is just you can't beat that, man. You cannot beat that. That's that's like Wasim over Waqar.
Okay.
Controversial finish perhaps, but yeah, any day Wasim.
The one Pakistan test match that you never saw but you wished you saw.
Oh, I'm trying to think. You, as in you mean you wished I saw live at the ground?
Yeah.
I saw the Sydney test against Australia. That was quite traumatic.
I'm sure you can't unsee it now.
Yeah, I can't unsee it now. Oh, of course, I would have loved to have seen Antigua 2000. 100%. Wasim at his peak, match fixing all around, Qayyum report, and dodgy umpiring. Yeah, absolute. But Antigua test for sure. It would have been an absolutely amazing experience.
On that note, Osman, thank you so much. I think we took more of your time than we planned, but hope you enjoyed it as much as we all did. Thank you.
I did. I hope you guys thought it was okay. I seem to have talked a lot, but
no.
Yeah,
it was good. That was the plan.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We've all won then. No, thank you so much for having me. It was really good.
Thank you, Tariq, Prashant, Zainab. That was a lot of fun. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Thank you. Thank you very much.